Hey everybody, it's me again. Uh, the title of this video is what does the sword of a giant have to do with battling loneliness in your world? So I want to talk a little bit about Goliath's sword. So I want to look at some things that I've learned recently. Typically it's an iron blade. I'm going to say in a minute that it's probably had some copper in it as well. But the Philistines at that time were advanced in their ironworking, gave them a military edge over Israel. Typically a broad, heavy blade. Goliath was a giant. The Bible says he was over 9 feet tall. I'm 6'5". I feel like I'm tall. I'm not 9 feet tall. So whether it was a single edge or a double-edged sword, it was typically smaller near the handle and came out to a broader leaf and then went back to a point. The hilt or the grip must have been massive because he would have to have two hands to wield it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the weight of it in a second. It was typically because he was such a well-tested victor in most of their battles. They probably had decorated it ornamentally. I don't know, that's probably not the right word. Probably had bronze and iron. His spearhead was made of bronze and iron, weighed 600 shekels, just the spearhead. That's about 15 pounds. Doesn't directly say that the sword was bronze, but his coat of mail and his helmet were bronze. So we can deduce that a lot of what he was using was made out of bronze. Typical swords of that time period were 2 to 3 feet long, weighed 2 to 4 pounds. His was likely 4 to 6 feet long and probably weighed between 8 and 15 pounds. Big sword. Another, again, both hands. For the fact that David, the young shepherd who killed Goliath, later carried that sword with him as a weapon and something we'll talk about here in a minute, but it physically was far too heavy for him, but spiritually it represented God's power, not David's power. Let's see. Let's get to what I wanted to make sure we talked about and put together the sword with David's story from 1 Samuel 21, 8 and 9. Have you ever felt like you had nothing left? No strength, no tools, no help, wondering how you're going to face the next challenge? That's exactly where David found himself. He was running from Saul. Saul was trying to have him killed or kill him. And he was alone. Right after this chapter in 1 Samuel, David's going to go to a cave and hide in a cave by himself where he writes one of the Psalms. It talks about how he's alone. So he was on the run from Saul. He was hungry. He was exhausted. He was unarmed. He came to a town where he spoke to a priest named Ahimelech. He asked the priest for food and a weapon, and the priest ended up giving him some consecrated bread after a discussion about him and his army, which he didn't have any. And then the priest said, by the way, the sword of Goliath, the guy who you killed, is actually in the back behind the ephod, and it's wrapped in a blanket. And if you want it, you can take it. And David replies, there is none like it. Give it to me. We've talked about the sword a little bit. It's stored in the sanctuary of a church, wrapped in a cloth. It was more than a weapon. It was testimony of God's power and deliverance. And in David's loneliness, God gave it back to him. What does that tell us? It tells us that God provides in loneliness. David had nothing, but God gave him what he needed: food and Goliath's sword. Sometimes, when it looks the darkest, God brings back a reminder of his past faithfulness to us. And number two, your greatest testimony can become your greatest weapon. The very thing that once intimidated you, like Goliath's sword, being held by a 9-foot giant, it can become proof that God is actually with you. Your past victories aren't just memories, they're tools to help you fight today's battles. Number three, God hadn't forgotten you. Even when David was a fugitive, he was rejected, he was alone, he was on the run, God reminded him, you are still the giant slayer, you are still anointed, and you are still mine. What do I want you to take away? I want you to take away that when you feel empty, lonely, unprepared, remember David was running from Saul. He had no food and no weapons. Remember Goliath's sword. Look back at the moments where God delivered you before. The victories are not in the past. They're weapons for your present. Loneliness will whisper, you're forgotten. But the sword says, you're chosen. So let me ask you, what's your Goliath sword? What's one reminder from the past to show how God showed up for you? Hold on to it, because the same thing that happened then can happen with you. Even in the cave, even when he was alone in the wilderness, God showed him that I'm still here. I'm still here with you, and I'm still for you. I see you. I hope this blesses you. I hope you find that one thing that is Goliath's sword in your life, and you can depend on it and hang on to it and use it. God bless you.